What are the consequences of glyphosate? We know all that. What are the symptoms of autism and how are the two related? And she did this. And Stephanie Seneff is her name, and she's done a book on glyphosate. But Monsanto always used to say that glyphosate is totally safe for us because our cells don't have the shikimate pathway. And everyone said, yeah, so it can't do any impact. But I know other scientists like Professor Huber and all who pointed out, he says, the bacteria in the soil have a shikimate pathway. The bacteria in our gut have a shikimate pathway. And this disruption by glyphosate is having huge implications. And your work, Natasha, is showing how much food has related to that. So the bacteria in our gut produce 3 aromatic amino acids, tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine through the shikimate pathway. Since our cells don't have the pathway, we have to have these bacteria in order to be able to process all this. These essential amino acids are precursors to the neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, and adrenaline, as well as thyroid hormone, folate, and vitamin E. The killing of gut bacteria leads to deficiencies in this important biological molecules and impairs our neurological functions. Now, if your entire fake food will be using more GMOs, more Roundup, more synthetic chemicals added to pretend, like in this Impossible Burger, they made a fake blood called heme to make it look like meat. And I can't understand. I said, you don't want to eat meat, don't eat meat. There are lots of vegetables. But why do you want to not eat meat, attack everyone, kill every cow, and then say, I want blood? It doesn't hang together for me. For the industry, I can understand. They'll tell any lie. DDT is good for you, is how they sell DDT. But for the people who are getting convinced by fake food and the fake narrative and the fake science and the fake economics, that's what puzzles me. And it puzzles me particularly because those who really think they're solving the climate problem are running down this false line fastest. Fake food as a climate solution is a fake solution because it's avoiding the real path we must follow, deeper integration between animals, plants, and trees, which is what integrated farming is about. More biodiversity. If the planet could cool itself through the biosphere, then our farming must mimic that process to intensify photosynthesis, to intensify biodiversity. And our work has shown that the more you intensify biodiversity, the more you recycle the carbon and nitrogen, the more the soil becomes healthy. You produce more nutrition per acre. We don't measure yield per acre, but what's the point of measuring nutritionally empty commodities? Food is about eating. Food is about nourishment. And if it's nutritionally empty food, you're going to get all kinds of sicknesses and disease. Because we do the soil work and we had, in the chemical soils, the zinc had gone down 34%. And in the organic soils, it had gone up 24%. So this public health specialist had come and was visiting us in Navdanya. And she saw this data and she says, now I understand why our young people are depressed. Because she does brain chemistry. And she found that half of Australia's teenagers were depressed. All of them had zinc deficiency. But if there's no zinc in your soil and no zinc on your food, you will have zinc deficiency. You will have magnesium deficiency and have an attention deficit. Yeah? But the chemical world just wants another chemical solution for each of these things. So there's a British meta-study covering more than 400 studies that has found that organic foods can have up to 60% more beneficial nutrition than chemical food. And the deficiency now, it's interesting, a paper comes out in a nutrition journal or in a toxicology journal For 2 days, it's there, measuring the nutritional emptiness of industrial food and how much more phytochemicals, how much more nutrients the real food has. And then you cannot Google that article. Just as much as when the whole issue of immunity came up. Now, everyone knows that organisms are healthy when they have immunity. Any organism. If a plant is organically fed, it is more resilient and will not be impacted by pests. There'd be the same pests in the field. But the chemically grown field will have attack of pests, and the organically grown field will not have an attack of pests. That's what Howard saw when he says lots of insects and no pests. So we're growing more and more nutritionally empty commodities at higher and higher cost. And then we're turning it magically into cheap food. How can a high-cost production system lead to cheap food? Because the structures of subsidies, the structures of trade, the structures of 400 billion is the agriculture subsidy that makes industrial food cheap enough to dump on third world countries. So they become dependent. Self-sufficient countries who were growing their own food are now importing. And it takes one little instability in the war, one collapse in supply chains for people to have no food. So real food, real farming, for me, is the biggest climate solution. And we've done this work. When you have a climate disaster, what do you want? You want seeds that are resilient, and we've saved the seeds that are resilient, climate tolerant, salt tolerant, flood tolerant, drought tolerant seeds. And they're able to survive and come back after a cyclone, after a drought. You want good resilience in the soil. Where does the resilience of the soil come from in a time where climate change is leading to more floods and more droughts? You need better holding of water. If your soil can hold more water, the flood is not severe. The flood is worst in areas where the soil has been totally panned.